President Donald Trump, even his haters have got to admit, has done an amazing job with the American economy, which, by the way, is good for our economy. So he had plenty to boast about today in giving the annual State of the Union address to Congress, to the politicians there. It was a great platform, too, to get his re-election campaign going. Re-election in just 9 months' time.
3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again.
Now, those Democrat politicians in Congress there, well, they were in the mood to hear all that great news and more. Their hatred of Trump is just too strong. Plus, I think they're rather scared they're just going to win the re-election. Their faces down to here. It was so partisan in there, so divided. True, it did start with Donald Trump seeming to refuse a handshake from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But I don't know, maybe didn't see the hand, or maybe, well, I think it's understandable. She and the Democrats, after all, have just wasted months trying to get Trump sacked for allegedly asking Ukraine to investigate Democrat Joe Biden for corruption. But then it got really nasty. The Democrat women there in white actually heckled and jeered and shook their fists at Trump during his speech. It was extraordinary behaviour. Juvenile. And then when Donald Trump finished, Nancy Pelosi theatrically ripped up her copy of his speech. Give me a break. Joining me a short while ago to discuss that speech was John Hinderaker of the terrific Powerline blog, also president of the think tank Centre for the American Experiment. John Hinderaker, thank you so much for joining us again. President Donald Trump's State of the Union address, your take?
Well, it was a tremendous night for President Trump and for the Republicans. And it was a great speech, not because it was delivered so well. Trump actually came across kind of subdued, a little bit low-key. But the content of the speech was tremendous. And the reason, Andrew, is because President Trump has accomplished so much in 3 years. He could stand up there for a long time just ticking off all of the accomplishments of his administration. And a lot of the speech was just that: record low unemployment, rising wages, lowest black unemployment ever, lowest Hispanic unemployment ever. You know, the numbers just go on and on and on. And it makes for a very powerful presentation.
That made it very awkward for the Democrats sitting there, particularly the women dressed in white. Why they all have to be so uniform, I guess that goes to the old collective mentality, escapes me. But it made it very difficult for them, for when he's boasting, among other things, for record low black unemployment and also a high rate of job uptake for women. Let me show that to you.
The unemployment rate for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans has reached the lowest levels in history.
But, John, the women couldn't even applaud that.
No, it puts them in a very tough position. I mean, they hate President Trump so much, they don't want to applaud anything he says. So he'll say, for example, 10 million people have gotten off welfare in the last 3 years. And they just sit there looking sad, like they want more people on welfare, you know. And, yeah, record low black unemployment, all these things, they just sit there looking glum. And I think it's very tough for them. I think they look very bad, to be honest.
Now, there was a real partisanship to this speech that I've rarely seen in State of the Union affairs. They're sort of, the speeches are usually quite supposed to be, above party political to some extent, although that's obviously not so much lately. But this one had an edge of bitterness. It started perhaps with Donald Trump seeming to snub Speaker Nancy Pelosi, which would be understandable, wouldn't shake her hand or perhaps didn't see it. Perhaps understandable given she spent the last few months trying to get him sacked, impeached, etc. But then it included the Democrat women in white shaking their fists at him and yelling at him and standing up and heckling, which is quite extraordinary. What did you make of all that?
Well, as you know, Andrew, feelings are running so high in Washington. The real problem, to get to the root of it, Andrew, is the Democrats have never accepted the results of the 2016 election. They just refuse to accept that Donald Trump is a legitimate president of the United States. Even before he was inaugurated, they were doing everything they could to try to undermine him, to prevent him from being effective. We now know about how the Obama holdovers in the Department of Justice and the FBI and the CIA were spying on the Trump presidential campaign. And then after he won, they continued spying on him. I mean, it's a huge, huge scandal, but they have never accepted that Donald Trump is the president. And they've been talking about impeaching him since before he was inaugurated. We've never seen that before. I mean, it's nuts. And now, for the last, however long it's been, we've seen this crazy impeachment drama playing out. And so that's what we saw tonight. These people are so bound up in their hatred of President Trump that they don't know how to behave. He gives good news, and they won't clap, because it's coming from him. And that's just a sign of how divisive things have become in Washington.
Yes, well, things are looking very good for him coming up to the election, of course. The impeachment failed. You mentioned the great track record he's been able to boast about with the economy. Basically, we've also seen just a Gallup poll saying that his approval rating has never been higher. Still, it's 49%, but it's still relatively good for such a polarised electorate. And, of course, yesterday or the day before, the Iowa caucus for the Democrats to choose the Democrat that would run against them in the election turned out to be a complete debacle, embarrassing, when they couldn't even count the vote for 24 hours. The Democrats couldn't even manage that. Now, Iowa is the first state to hold a caucus to pick of Democrat supporters to pick the Democrat candidate to run against Trump. There's not many votes there. First makes it significant. The votes really don't. But the result that we've got from it is Pete Buttigieg, he's a small-town gay mayor, ex-serviceman, middle of the road for the Democrats, which to me is good. He wins, surprisingly, of what votes have been counted so far. The socialist Bernie Sanders comes second, Elizabeth Warren third, so they're splitting the crazy left vote. I think the only really important takeout, though, is Joe Biden, the former vice president, who used to be the front runner, a distant fourth. Is this the end for Joe Biden?
Well, it's not the end yet, Andrew, but you are exactly right. That the only significant thing that we're seeing here is Biden's terrible performance, but I'm not a bit surprised by it. I mean, Joe Biden is a terrible candidate. To be perfectly blunt, Andrew, he was never smart. His nickname is Slow Joe, Slow Joe Biden. He was never very intelligent, and now, as he's gotten older, he's just become bizarre, and it's very hard for him to get through an appearance in public without anything embarrassing happening. And so that's a huge problem. And the other huge problem is that the Democrats who turn out for primaries and caucuses are not looking for an establishment figure who's been in the Senate for almost 50 years, which is Joe Biden. That's the last thing they want. They're looking for somebody new or, failing that, somebody radical. And so he's not done yet, but I think he's going to be done pretty soon.
John Hinderaker, as always, a great pleasure to speak with you. And anyone that wants to catch up with your further thoughts on this should go to the Powerline blog, which I check out every day. Top blog. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Great to be with you. Bye-bye.